No, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
so, I'm hoping to break that illusion of chasing after stuff because, like you're saying, there are people that just, have something to give, want to find meaning, and sometimes it's getting that inner programming out of the way to be able to step into that.
And I think there's a myth out there that stuff is going to make us happy.
Of course. Oh, yeah. In our culture, it's like the guy with the biggest house and has everything to himself wins,
Yeah, and you think, wins what?
And cars and a lawnmower and and a printer and everything to myself. It's like the idea of sharing household items has kind of been lost along the way somewhere.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're certainly seeing a resurgence of what's being called the share economy.
Oh, it's beautiful. I love it.
And I think that's the same sort of thing. I do think there's some change going on. It sounds like you're just right there on the leading edge with it. So
yeah, I feel like I have been for a while. For the last, I'd say about 10 years or so, I've been saying all this stuff, and I have to admit, about 4 or 5 years ago, I started getting exhausted because I thought no one was listening. And the last 5 years, people are waking up, and it's been really exciting to kind of go, okay, sweet, they're ready for me. So
Yeah, that's true. So talk about the law of attraction. You said you're a law of attraction coach, and so talk about that. I mean, what is that, and how does it work, and how do you teach that to people?
Yeah, well, I mean, simply put, the law of attraction is a principle, like electricity or, the law of aerodynamics. It works for everybody. It doesn't, have favorites. And the principle is that like energy attracts like energy. A great example that someone told me a long time ago that I love to use is if you get a big amphitheater and, you have those tuning forks where if you hit it, it'll make a sound.
Yeah.
You get a whole amphitheater and you put tuning forks all the way around, and each one is set to a different frequency. And you stand in the middle with one tuning fork and you hit it, the one other tuning fork that matches that frequency will begin to vibrate. That's the law of attraction.
Goodness.
Like energy attracts like energy, and it actually enlivens like energy. And so we're literally drawing to us all the time that which matches our frequency of vibration. So we're just walking magnets. And so we are using the law of attraction all the time. The problem is most of us are using it very unconsciously. And I would say the other problem is that it's in the mainstream law of attraction world, there's almost this fear of negative thinking. It's kind of silly. And there's this, you must do positive thinking. And that's all well and good, except for the fact that 95% of our thoughts are unconscious. And so if we're only, let's say, able to change those 3% to positive thinking, it's going to take a lot of work to get to that 95%. And if we're afraid to even look there, then we're not ever going to get there.
Yeah.
And so, I believe since we're walking magnets, if we are carrying around wounds, baggage, false beliefs about ourselves, beliefs in lack or limitation or unworthiness, that's part of our vibrational frequency, and that's what we're attracting into our life. And so part of my work is helping people identify these cultural programmings, these false beliefs, habits, patterns, whatever it is that's in there that is attracting what we don't want, so that we can be free, so we can clear that out and vibrate to the frequency of what we do want, so that we can attract that into our life.
So you're helping people identify the unconscious thinking that they're doing. I mean, they're taking care of the conscious thinking, but you're helping them identify what's inside that is radiating forth and shift that. Is that right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Because the only way that we can tune into what that 95% unconscious thoughts are is by looking at our behaviors, by looking at how we react to things under stress, by looking at our patterns, and by looking at what we attract into our life.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we're so, it's like asking a fish where the water is. A lot of times we're so in our own stuff that we can't see it. And so, having someone outside of ourselves that has no judgment but can point out, hey, it sounds like you believe X is, is that going to get what you want?
Yeah, wow. So do you have any examples of how it works? Do you have?
Yeah, absolutely.
Stories? We love stories.
Yeah, okay. I will tell you the first story that I ever really got how this worked. So I was in class. This was, 12 years ago. I'm in what we call the foundations class of the teaching of science of mind, which is what I studied through founder Ernest Holmes, and so I'm learning about all this thing. This thought creates things. Thoughts are things. Thoughts create your life, and I'm dabbling with this idea. I'm like, okay. So, needless to say, this was around the time that I was going through my divorce. I was not the person then that I am now. I was going through a lot of drama. I had someone crash into my car, and I was having a rental car, and I had gotten into an argument with my ex-husband, and so I made the really smart decision that I was going to go to a bar by myself, which, by the way, that's the only time I've ever done that.
Good choice,
Starr. Yeah, thanks. So I go to the bar by myself, get really, really, really drunk, and they send me home in a taxi. I pass out at home. I wake up the next morning, and it just kind of dawned on me, I don't remember my keys being in my purse when I got home. My roommate had let me in. So I look in my purse, and my keys are gone. And I call the bar, and the rental car is gone. And normally, I would just be so mad and, livid and feel like a failure and all this stuff. But I started laughing because I realized what had happened was I had created it with my thoughts. So in my past, I had a really bad experience with a rental car where I didn't return it for a long time, and I owed a lot of money. And so here I have this rental car, and I'm having issues with getting a check cashed, and I'm trying to buy a new car, and I am scared to death that the same thing will happen. So I literally can't even picture me walking in and handing them the keys. But at the same time, I am screaming to the universe, get this car away from me, get this car away from me, please, I don't want this rental car anymore. And so the universe manifested that for me. I couldn't picture myself walking in and handing them the keys, but I wanted that car gone. And so as soon as I woke up the next morning and realized the car was gone, I just started laughing, and I was like, oh, that's how thoughts create your life. So that's my example. I manifested getting rid of the car in a way that I didn't have to go take the keys back. Of course, there were consequences to that manifestation. But it was a great example to me of how the universe doesn't take things personally. It doesn't have an agenda. It just says yes to our thinking. And especially those thoughts that we're really passionate about. And I was really passionate about being scared of having that rental car, and I was really passionate about wanting to get rid of it. And so the universe responded.
Wow. So I hope that you are teaching people how to use this in a very positive way for themselves.
Yes. Yes, absolutely, because, we have those growth opportunities, and yet it's always fun to be manifesting good stuff.
Wow.
So, because of that, it helped me to recognize how powerful those unconscious thoughts are.
Yes.
If we don't address them.
Yes, yes. Well, I certainly know that we are co-creators of the world that we live in. And, I often say we're dancing with the universe, I
love that. We are.
So how does one go about how does one go about tuning into this law of attraction or becoming a practitioner? What happens?
Well, as far as you mean being a user of the practice of
user or a practitioner, right?
Well, as far as being a user, everyone's already using the law of attraction.
We're already doing it.
We're already doing it.
It doesn't matter whether you're consciously doing it or not. It's at work.
Yeah, it's always at work. You're always attracting into your life. Now, I wouldn't say, a lot of people can take that into blame mode. Does that mean that I'm to blame for all the horrible stuff in my life? We're all connected, too. So we're in this big soup of consciousness. And so, yes, we will attract stuff into our life, but sometimes it's based on what the entire culture thinks, not just what our little mind is thinking. Mm-hmm. So, we have to recognize that sometimes we're just tuning in to the status quo and manifesting from that place as well. And so we aren't individual bubbles walking around. And so that's one thing to remember, is that you are always using it, and sometimes you're using it by not being conscious, and when we're not conscious, then we just kind of get sucked into the status quo of what the culture thinks.
Yeah.
And so really it's about saying, okay, what do I want to create in my life? And if that's what I want to create, what would I have to become in order to experience that? If I want, if I want to experience love in my life, am I being loving? Am I loving myself? Am I treating myself with love? Because you won't accept anything from anybody else that you're not giving to yourself.
Yes.
You won't have a spot to put it.
Yes.
And so part of it is being willing to move into a better relationship with yourself, because that, when we are in a space of love and openness and appreciation, then we attract that into our life, and we attract people in our life that appreciate us, and we attract experiences that allow us to be more loving. And so it's really, focusing on what you want instead of what you don't want.
That's great. That's great. I mean, you make it sound so simple, and I know it's a very hard journey.
Well, as Ernest Holmes says, it's simple. That doesn't mean it's easy.
Yeah, exactly. It's simple, but it's not easy. I like that.
Yeah.
I like it a lot. So, Radical Revelations is your company, right?
Yes, it is.
And talk about that. How do you bring all of this view, this philosophy, this practice into working with your clients and into your company? How do you work? How does this work for you? What happens at Radical Revelations?
Yeah, well, I've been licensed to see clients for 5 years, and Radical Revelations is only about a year old. And so about a year ago, I had only been primarily seeing people in my local spiritual community here in Portland. And I had recently had a client that I was seeing on a regular basis. And there was such a contrast in what we were able to do with a long-term commitment, rather than what I call crisis clients, where people just call when their stuff is up. And so I decided that I wanted to expand my business, and I decided that I wanted to reach out into the greater community and offer more packages with more commitment. And so I founded Radical Revelations last year. And I chose that name because, to me, it's not about becoming anything. It's about revealing the amazing self that we all already are. Mm-hmm. And if we've been telling ourselves false stories for long enough, just imagining that we're amazing can be a radical shift in thinking.
Yeah.
And so it kind of, it can be somewhat radical to reveal that that unique part of us that is begging to be seen, and yet we're so afraid to show.
Yeah.
And so I really wanted Radical Revelations to be a place where, people could get support in that process of being okay with who they are and showing up in the world with what their heart, is passionate for. There's people that want to do things for the environment, that want to do things for social justice, that want to do things to encounter racism, that want to do things that benefit children, that want to do all this stuff, and yet they're working their 9-to-5 job because they're so afraid that that's the only option.
Yes.
And I wanted to, reach out to these people so that they could feel like they weren't alone. I felt alone for a really long time, like I was the only one that thought this way. And now I'm coming to find, thanks to the law of attraction, once I owned it in me, I am attracting tons of people into my life who get it. I have more people in my life who understand what I'm talking about than I ever have. And it's because I'm owning it. And
how
so
positive is that?
It's pretty amazing. It's pretty incredible. Just the amount of connections and entrepreneurs and forward thinkers that I've met in the last year has been so inspiring, and it really has helped the momentum continue forward. And so I do want to be on the edge of this new shift in thinking and consciousness. I do consider my perspective unique, and Radical Revelations is my tool to get that message out there. And so
I know certainly with the Better, Smarter, Richer work, we start with what is it that you are passionate about, because that's your clue, about what you should be doing in your business. That's the clue right there, about how you should be working with somebody. And, so we start there. And it really makes a big difference. So
I'm really passionate about societal change, and so that was really I would say for a long time I was just really angry at the world, and I did the angry activist kind of thing. And through working through the law of attraction, and also working with Sharif Abdullah, who has the Common Way Institute here in Portland, he really helped me to see how my anger was impeding my ability to impact the world. And so Radical Revelations is my positive impact.